please help me welcome the founder and CEO of Dexterity Global and my very dear friend, Sharad Sagar.
Thank you, Anya, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody. I know lunch is in 20 minutes. I promise I'll keep it short. But have a little bit of energy because we are hopefully in the next 20 minutes going to talk about things that will allow us to move from the 20th century to the 21st. So are you ready for it? All right, perfect. That sounds so much better. So just to give you a little bit of background about who I am, except for that Forbes list and that Rockefeller list, this is where I come from. I come from a country called India. Everybody's heard of it. I was talking about cricket with Vanya a few minutes back, and I was so proud that some people here know cricket in the audience. So that's good enough. So I was born in a small village of India and brought up in 6 small towns of the country. My father worked for the State Bank of India, which is the national bank of the country, and he was posted in a lot of rural areas. So all these villages and small towns where I was growing up, there were no good schools, no good libraries, no place where our parents could be sure that their kids were getting quality education. So my parents were overcautious about educating me and my siblings. We were homeschooled for the longest period of time, and then moved to the nearest capital city to go to school so that we could finally enter a formal education setup. When I went to school, I was already enrolled in grade 4, which was that was the first time when I saw what a school was. All this time, living in small towns and cities, I had only imagined what a good school may look like, what a big city would be like. And to be very honest, when I went to school, it was not that interesting. All the images that I had of school and what it would be like, all that changed. But I got the opportunity to, one, be a really outstanding student. That was because every single time I was in classroom and the content that was being delivered was not interesting, I would start talking to a friend of mine and I would be sent out of the class. So I would always be outstanding. People here get jokes. Besides that, in the 7-8 years that I spent in the schooling system, I had the opportunity to compete at over 100 to 200 different debate competitions and quiz competitions, go and participate in conferences across the world, and had the great honor of representing my country in over 6 different countries. And all along, as you would imagine, I was being celebrated in my school, in my city, and most people who knew me were like, "You're doing really well, that's great." Somewhere inside, I was just wondering about my own journey. And that was the journey of any other kid, any ordinary kid growing up in a small town or a small village who probably had the same amount of passion and fire that I had, who probably has even bigger dreams than I have, and is disconnected from opportunities. That's exactly what brought me to do what I do at Dexterity today. These are 3 things that we do. We connect kids with opportunities, help them build their skill sets, and when we talk about skill sets, we focus on critical thinking, research, communication, and leadership. And we enable young people to transition from high school to colleges and top colleges across the world. We've been doing it for the last 8 years now, and I have had the honor of meeting several bright young kids in different parts of the country and in South Asia primarily. That's something that I thought was important to tell you so that you have a little bit of idea about who I am, where I'm coming from, and why I do what I do. But more importantly, considering the kind of audience that you are, most of you here are leaders in some way or the other. You either create content that makes sense, or you consume content and then make sense out of it. Most of you are going to be big leaders in times to come in whatever field you are in. So I thought I would leave you with a small story. And that can be the beginning of something big in this century. 2 weeks back, I was in a small village of India, back to those places where I actually came from. 30 kilometers away from a major city, I was hoping to talk to young people, school kids and college students. There were 2,000 young people who showed up in that small village of India, where before I left for that location, people told me that who would come down and hear you talk? These are young people who go to some small school, who go for their education in some dilapidated facility, whether it is a coaching institution or a school. And most people had told me that nobody would come and hear you talk. But 2,000 kids showed up in this small village of India. What happened there was amazing. Parents reaching out, asking me how their kids can do better. Kids reaching out and asking me if they were dreaming the right dreams, if they were going down the right path. And me talking about how, one, they could continue dreaming bigger because, one, my own story is their story. And two, all the platforms that we've built at Dexterity can be of use to them. But more importantly, a small girl, she got up and asked me a question at the end of the talk. She asked me that every single time I tell my parents that I want to be a businesswoman in my life, and I want to go ahead and be in the corporate sector, work for a company for some time, and then go ahead and start my own company, they tell me two things. The first one is that you're from a small town or a village. And the second thing that they tell me is, you are a girl. So, these things are not meant for you. And for a split second, I did not have an answer to give that young girl right then. But then I looked at her in the audience, and I asked her, we recently finished with the Olympic Games, right? And she said, yes. And I was like, who won the medals? Which guys won the medals? And the interesting thing is, India this time in Olympics, every single medal winner happens to be a female. So I asked her, which guys won the medals? And she was like, no, sir, they were all girls. And I said, okay, and the two people who went to space from the country, which guys were they? And she was like, no, Kalpana Chawla, Sunita Williams, they're all women. And I was like, okay, so tomorrow when you want to go ahead and do something, you think you can? And she was smiling, and she was like feeling a little more confident. And she was like, yes. So I was like, okay, go back home and tell your parents the next time they tell you that you're a girl so you can't do it, go ahead and tell them that there's so many women who have made so many good things happen in the world, from science and technology to politics to leadership, and in every single field. And that was a happy moment for me, a happy moment for her, and everybody in the audience loved it. Several weeks later, on my flight to this beautiful place, by the way, this is a beautiful country, so everybody who lives here, it's amazing. So on my flight to this place, I was actually thinking about, what should I talk to you people about? Because you are talking about the 21st century techniques in everything. The kind of content you produce, the kind of platforms we look at, the way the world is moving from Facebook to Snapchat. And I thought I would ask you a couple of things, and not ask for your answer in real time, but look at it, how we can potentially do something with the answer. Because ever since I answered that young girl about going back and looking at all these women who had conquered outer space, who had won medals at Olympics, I wondered if I should have told her that when she goes and works for a corporate, she'll have to work 70 more days in order to get the same paycheck that a person who does not look like her will. That every single time she goes and works for a corporate organization, she will have to work twice as hard just to, one, maintain her position and get the kind of paycheck that she truly deserves to get. That I should have probably told her right then that at times she'll realize that she cannot be a mom and a CEO, both three-letter words, at the same time. And that when she'll go out there, and no matter which field she goes in, whether it is politics, or science and tech, or anything that she wants to choose, she'll always have to overcome a lot of barriers. And when I thought about how can we change that, one, I did not say that on purpose to her, because for that young girl it is important to dream right now, because she is at the bottom of the pyramid from where people see big dreams. Most of you, whether you realize it or not, are at the top of the pyramid. You are in some way influencers. You have made your way to corporate organizations. Some of you run or advise corporates. And that's the reason why I thought of coming down here and talking to you in this beautiful country about that idea. That idea that is floated in newspapers and talked about in lawsuits. every single time a corporation gets sued, what do they say? Corporations are people. So anywhere in the world, when you look at organizations, the founders do not go to jail if the corporation does something wrong, technically. Because corporations are fined, corporations are shut down, and corporations look like people all the time. So here's the more important question we need to ask. That every single century as humans, we have evolved. When will our corporations evolve? When will we start creating a more just and equal workplace for all those young children who I work with back in my home country or in South Asia? That is part one of the story. Getting all corporations to start moving towards a more just and equal workplace. Because whether we agree or we don't, here's the second part of the story. And that is that corporations bring change. There was a guy by the name of Henry Ford who decided it was not cool to have faster horses anymore. So today we drive cars. There was a young guy by the name of Mark Zuckerberg who decided it was not cool to write letters all the time. There had to be a better way of connecting to people. So we have Facebook. Tomorrow, young people from you and the ones who are already running something or the other, you'll be delivering a lot of change. What I want you to think about as a young social entrepreneur myself, this is what my request to you is. That when you go out and start a corporation, remember that change is profitable. Change can have a business model. Because most young people I meet all across the world today think that when they want to solve a problem, they have to do it in a non-profit way. They have to run a charity to make something happen. And that is because largely our media and people around us try and glamorize social entrepreneurship or try and glamorize nonprofits in such a way that we forget that for-profit companies make impact as well. If you talk to somebody about Bill Gates today, they'll tell you he's such an amazing person because he started a foundation that gives out money. Nobody will tell you that he is one of the greatest impact entrepreneurs in the world because he expanded the global economy by several $100 trillion with what he started by the name of Microsoft. Today, people are more productive. They are able to bring more money. They are able to create more impact because they engage with a corporation called Microsoft. So always remember, if you really want to make sure that you create impact, you do not need to look at a for-profit way of doing it or a non-profit way of doing it. If you just go ahead and build a company that makes impact, delivers value, and people pay for it, you're doing the right thing. That is point one. Starting from here, if any of you want to enter the field of social entrepreneurship, make change happen, remember those two things. The first one is even change needs a business model. Whoever you look at all across the world, you'll need to sustain that change. If what you do is so important that everybody should have it, you need to create a roadmap to it. And that, a number of times, is a business model. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, remember, nonprofit is a legal structure, not a business model. So if you're trying to make anything work for people in this country, in this continent, or all across the world, try and build an organization, try and build a product that sells and makes money for itself so that you can reach more people and serve more people. The third thing is that no matter which corporation you enter, no matter what you do, continue the fight for that more equal and just workplace. So that young girl who I gave that reply to 2 weeks back, by the time she is entering a workplace, she does not have to work 70 more days to get the same kind of paycheck. She does not have to look at that Fortune 500 list where only 20 out of 500 people look like her and think whether she can do it. Let's create a more equal, more just world. Make it happen through our own corporations that are people, and it is time for them to evolve towards a more just, a more compassionate world. Let the values of empathy enter our organizations. And tomorrow, when we decide to build organizations to make change happen, let's try and make sure that those organizations have a business model, a roadmap, because doing good things is not enough. Making sure that those good things live even after we are gone is more important. Thank you so much, everybody. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much. That was truly inspiring. We are running out of time, but I have to ask you just one question. You talked about corporations, education, change. But actually, I want to ask you something else. As a man who spent almost half of his life trying to inject innovation into education, as a man who declined Harvard and went back to India to work with youth and children, what do you think? Is it now the right time for India to have its first entrepreneur prime minister? And more importantly, would you run that race?
That's a wonderful question. There are a couple of things about it. One is that, as I told my story, I promised that I would always stay committed to nation building and public service and work largely as a global citizen. I do hope that somebody from the Dexterity Network, these young people who we work with, that young girl who I was talking about, one of them can go ahead and be head of state. For me, yes, if there's an opportunity where I can take the larger role, I would love to go for it. So yeah, thank you.
So I have a friend who may be a prime minister of India one day.
I have no idea, but you'll always have a friend who's working towards change in some part of the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.